Well, that March 15th deadline's fast approaching here for your finalizing of insurance. We just had a few more questions come across our desk, and so we brought Craig back to do another Q&A here on some of these insurance products. So to get us things started off here, I mean, do you have any private products that you would recommend, Craig?
Yeah, so the couple things I'd really look into, the first things I have up here is, looking into hail insurance and wind and green snap. I think hail insurance is a must, especially for those, carrying the enterprise unit insurance. You could have one field, the hail can be really spotty. We just think it's a good product to have on top of your RP policy, to cover any hail issues that you could have. The next thing we're looking at here is the replant option. And I'm looking at Winneshiek County, Iowa. You can get an extra $50 an acre coverage for $1.70 on corn and $2.25 per an acre on soybeans. I really like getting this extra coverage, especially on soybeans for those producers who are going to be very aggressive, pushing the dates on when they want to get their beans in. Soybeans are very susceptible to frost. And we just think that if you're going to push the deadline, this extra replant coverage on top of your RP policy works out really good. And the one thing with this replant option is it does give you an extra 20 days before the earliest planting date on either corn or soybeans. So it gives you that extra coverage.
Nice. All right. Talk to me about government subsidies.
So
What are we
the
looking at?
so the one big thing is, ECO is the big thing this year that a lot of people are talking about. And the government subsidy is now 65% up from, I believe it was 44, last year. So I mean, we think that's a good program to look at. And then when we look at all the other, just on the revenue protection enterprise unit, we just want to remind guys what the subsidy levels are. When you're buying 50 to 70%, you're getting 80% of it paid by the government. When you go down to 85%, only 53% of it's paid by the government. So we just wanted to go over these numbers here, just show them to you, just so you have a reminder of what they are.
What do you generally look at or like to recommend here when we're talking to
Oh,
subsidies and coverage?
it all comes down to the area you're in. If you're in an area where, you don't have as many losses and there's less risk, that 80% and sometimes 85 even makes sense. When you get in those areas where there's a lot more risk and a lot more, payments have been made, the rates are a lot higher, then we go down to that 75 or even 70%.
Gotcha. What other revenue policy or revenue protection policies are you looking at? Do you like it for going into this
Yeah,
year?
so the one big thing I always remind producers to look at is when you just have your basic revenue policy, there are some options on that policy that are very minimal in cost. All right. So when you go down this list here, we have quality loss, yield adjustment, 60%, and yield cup. Okay, those are three different products that help hold up your APH if you have a really bad year
Yeah.
or your crop is really, really off. All right. The next one on here is trend adjust. This has been around for a while, and most producers do have it on their policy. What that does, it goes back 10 years and helps boost those older yields up so your APH is more in line with what it currently has. All right. Then the last one, some people have and don't have is they have the prevent planting, you get an extra 5%. On corn, you get a 55% payment with your RP policy. On soybeans, you get 60%. This adds an extra 5% to that coverage. So when you're looking at this, on corn, it adds, you get an extra payment, and I should say an extra payment. It raises your payment, an extra 5%. So you have an $800 guarantee on corn. That's an extra $40 an acre on prevent plant. And when we go back to Winneshiek County, like on this other one, it's only an extra 11 cents an acre on corn, and 10 cents on beans. We just think these are very valuable ones to make sure that you have in your policy.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some pretty good prevent plant here fairly recently, right?
Yeah, I
A couple
mean,
years
it
back.
seems like every year. I mean, you look a couple years back, we had a lot of prevent plant across the country. I mean, you look at like an extra $40 an acre, and you have 500 acres. I mean, that's a nice little check.
Right.
Just bumping it up to 5%. So it always seems every year, someplace in the Midwest or in the Corn Belt, that people have prevent planting. And we just hope. I mean, you never hope it on your neighbors, but it always seems to happen someplace because that's just the way Mother Nature works.
All right. What kind of final thoughts do you have for producers as we wrap this thing up?
The biggest thing that we have to look at is always agent recommendations. Okay. The biggest thing is you got to make sure, what's your best interest and not in your agent's, interest and commission driven. All right. And then the last thing, is ask a lot of questions. Okay. And the one thing, on what we look at, and we've talked about it in a couple of our previous videos is, ECO is very popular this year. But when we look at ECO, we like adding ECO, but we really like going down a level on your RP policy. So if you had an RP policy before of, let's just say 85% in Iowa, and you want to add ECO, well, when you add that, that adds an extra $15 an acre to your total coverage. We really like going down to 80%, because then you can reduce your overall cost by $10 an acre, and you're still getting a higher level of coverage. You're just putting a little bit of gap in there is what we're looking at.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And at the end of the day, you have to evaluate what your risk is. Every producer's risk is different. You have to remember this is insurance, okay? And another thing is you can insure yourself out of a profit, and we really like the RO for aggressive planners. The one thing that I get a lot of comments on, Patrick, is, or questions on is, what are the insurance price floors, or what are your thoughts of, from the marketing side on these floors?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember is that when you sign up for that revenue protection policy, right, you get a percentage of that spring price at this, in this instance. And we just did a video on that. So you'll want to make sure to check that out, because if you raise an APH crop, your actual insurance floor price is quite a bit lower on just your standard revenue protection policy. So that's where you need to have a marketing plan, know your production and your input numbers, so that you can have some confidence to sell ahead and reward some of these rallies. As Craig mentioned, that's the whole point of insurance. It's supposed to give you confidence to market. It's not necessarily there to guarantee your profit. It's there to help make you whole. Obviously, these add-ons will adjust some of that stuff as far as percentages go, but on your typical revenue protection policy, that price floor can be a lot lower than what you think. So make sure to check out that video to kind of get a table for that information.
Last thing here, if you want to get a hold of me and you have questions as you're going over this with your agent, or you're trying to make your final decisions, the easiest and fastest way to get a hold of me is just calling on my cell number, of 262-707-4112. You can text or call that number at any time. I'll be around all weekend, so if you have questions, don't be afraid to reach out. We'd be happy to help you.
As always, thanks for watching. We hope you guys find this information helpful. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. We always enjoy making the content for you.